Hello, everyone. This game is from round six from the London Chess Classic between GM Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces and GM Hikaru Nakamura with the black pieces. This one was a barn burner. Let's look at it. So E4, C5, Sicilian defense, Knight F3, D6, and I must say that this is refreshing to see this opening, the Sicilian, on being played. I like it more than to see it more than the Berlin. D6, D4, open Sicilian. C takes D4, Knight takes D4. White has a little bit of space advantage as he occupies four ranks. These first four ranks, two blacks, three ranks. So he has a space advantage here. And the main battle in this line of the Sicilian is definitely over this square D5. Another thing, not to get too deep into the Sicilian, because there's many books and it's definitely a complicated opening. But just note that black has a pawn preponderance in the center. In other words, he has two pawns in the center versus white's one. And this feature alone creates many problems for white in trying to press his advantage, his space advantage, because it's hard for him to move in the center or use the central squares to move his pieces about, because black has more pawns in the center and is often able to control white's movements. So white's often not able to use d5 or e5 to move his pieces, and so he must go for more risky means, choose riskier means in attacking black, and that's why you see a lot of flank attacks from black. Excuse me, from white. For instance, with f4 and g4 and stuff like that. It's really hard to press in the center. So knight f6 was played again, just developing with tempo. Knight c3, a6. This is known as a Najdorf variation, named after the Argentinian, Polish slash Argentinian Grandmaster Miguel Najdorf. Bishop g5. This is a little bit old school right here. I mean, and again, it's refreshing to see that going back to the what the old masters used to play. Bishop g5 used to be the main line here. I mean, now you see, you know, all these fancy lines being played with bishop e3, f3, h3. Guys get a hold of computer technology and go bonkers. So it's good to go back to the days of Bronstein, Tal, Botvinnik, and just put that bishop on g5, where it exerts pressure against this knight on f6 and fights for the square d5. The d5 square is very important because you want to keep control of that square. And bishop g5 is one of the only moves in the position that does that. Besides, you're planning on playing queen d2 and then castling queen side. So it's very, very direct type, plan. A lot of times f3 is played supporting the e pawn, anticipating the counterattack on the e pawn, and then g4 and h4, e6. Again, notice the influence white has, control over these two central squares. Very important. Also, he avoids double pawns by playing e6. f4. Again, this is an old school line and pretty straightforward line. Many times the queen will end up on f3. And again, with the same idea of queenside castling. The main idea behind f4 is basically to get in this e5 at an opportune time. e5, and sometimes the move f5 is played under certain circumstances, and the idea is to undermine the black's control of d5. So, for instance, after f5, if there's some kind of exchange or black pushes, then d5 becomes vulnerable. h6, bishop drops back, queen b6. There's a variation called the poison pawn variation, which takes place immediately after bishop g5, queen b6. It officially used to play a very tactical variation. So this game kind of transposes into it a little bit, maybe. So h6, bishop h4, then queen b6. And I'm not sure how to take this move. It's been played before, but this pawn is really not in too much danger. After a3, Nakamura just plays bishop e7. The pawn cannot really be safely taken after queen takes b2, knight a4, and then the queen is locked up and trapped. So he's forced to take the rook, which is basically equivalent to resigning here. So a3 just keeps the queen from being able to take the pawn and then escape to a3. So once that square is taken away, this pawn cannot be taken. Bishop e7, bishop f2. I always talk about this in my videos. Opposition. You see? Eventually that queen is going to have to move. He could do it now, do it later. But right now there happens to be an immediate threat on the board. So he can't go here. He can't take b2. And moves like, just something real nasty like knight e6 is threatened. Opposition is good. You can take your piece of lesser value and oppose it against a piece of higher value. It's a good way to gain tempo in the position. All right, so queen c7. Naka makes the smart moves, gets his queen out of there. So the question is, well, maybe he could have went there right away instead of going to b6 first and then back. So I guess you would have to weigh whether the bishop is more valuable here or here on h4. I feel the bishop is more valuable here on f2 at this point, and that it accomplished its job there. Okay, queen f3, as I said, bolstering up the center. This move, again, creates the option for white to castle on the queen side, and also supports future advance of the g-pawn. So this is an old but good attacking system. Knight bd7. And there it is. There's white setup. b5, and we know how the Sicilian is. It's basically kill or be killed. And in this line, you're going to have the attack on both sides of the board. So when you have such setups where opposite side castling takes place, many times a lot of material is sacrificed. Pawns are not as not as valuable. Open lines and the speed of attack is at a premium. And we see here Nakamura has already started his attack. This is one of the purposes of the move a6 in the Najdorf, is to get a quick head start on that early queen side attack. And we see it. This is what makes the Sicilian so dangerous in such a fighting opening, is that black basically goes all for broke on the queen side. And meanwhile, with these pawns in the center, it's kind of difficult to get at black's king here. So Nakamura has his attack started already, and he has, with this pawn being provoke the a3. He has a hook here, so he can maybe sacrifice that pawn to open up this file, or threaten to capture the a pawn and open up the b file. So it's already pretty serious at this point. G4. So again, continuing with the plan. So he says, hey, I got to get my attack rolling. G5. And so Nakamura is basically trying to blunt the white attack. He's keeping the king right here for now. And basically trying to keep the position closed as possible on the king side. So that he can't be checkmated over here. But another more subtle idea behind this move G5 is to undermine this square. So for instance, black knows that white wants to open up the position on the king side. So to open it, he either has to play f takes G5, and even F5, which with the idea of taking on E6. But if black wanted to, he could play the move E5. But remember, as I said earlier, if black plays move E5, then he has to be cognizant of the knight going to D5 at an opportune time. Now, white is facing the same dilemma now. This move right here, putting pressure on the F4 pawn, threatens to undermine its control over the E5 square. So once E5, the F pawn is moved, then this knight can hop in here, right? And hit the queen on F3. And even in some cases come here. Okay? So H4. A bold move, and he's basically just trying to blow the position open. Now he's threatening to take here, of course, and this rook is unprotected. So G takes F4, and bishop E2 is played. Now, notice that since this pawn has been captured, the square is now accessible to the knight. Now, if queen takes right away, then the E5, and you have this fork right here. So this is why Caruana does not take right away. Instead, he chooses to develop his pieces and connect his rook. Now, perhaps a tad better might have been G5. Now, Caruana wants to play G5, but what he's looking at is, hey, if I do G5 right now, then black will play H takes G5, and my rook is unprotected. Basically, both rooks are unprotected. So Caruana wants to play G5 and bust open the king side, but he's like, wait a minute, my rook's not protected. So, and also this move knight E5 can happen also. But after this move, H takes G5, right? Let's look at just the main idea. After H takes G5, H takes G5, the rook is protected by the queen. And that's actually bad for black. Because now the queen has unadulterated access to the king side. And now I'll give you an example, because remember, this knight is still on prise, so the knight has to move. So say the knight comes to G4, right, with the idea of attacking this bishop. White has a killer move here. He plays knight takes E6, the attack on the queen. Then after F takes E6, queen H5, and we see that once proud knight on G4 is going to prison. Chess prison. King D4, King D8, excuse me, and Queen takes G4. And that's all good for white right there, and that's what black gets for keeping his king in the middle. And he had this pass pawn. This probably will become a queen or at least earn a piece by sacrificing itself. And that's the penalty you pay for keeping your king in the middle too long. However, Caruana did not play that game. That game. He did not play that move G5, which is probably a little better than what he played. So after Bishop E2, Nakamura decided to play the natural move B4. Attacking. This is what you do in the Sicilian. It's hard to blame him for playing this move right here. But I just want to point out too that this move doesn't work, right? Because you say, hey, why not just link the pawns, link the pawns together? Well, again, you got to be careful because each time you move a pawn, you're giving up a square, or you're weakening a square. And in this case, the knight would just hop here to F5, which is excellent place for the knight. So you don't want to do that. However, remember the move we talked about earlier? We were talking about the main idea in the Sicilian revolving around this D5 square. This move is interesting. It's playing D5. It's kind of counterintuitive because the king is in the middle. So it's like, man, why would I want to allow my opponent an opportunity to open up the position here? But it's an interesting move. I probably wouldn't play it. I'm too scared to play a move like that. I'll just drop the knight and play E5 or something like that. But just some food for thought. Nakamura played B4, excuse me. It doesn't seem too bad. He's attacking the knight. And again, sacrificing the pawn in the Sicilian is nothing. It's like throwing a penny on the street or something. A takes B4. Knight E5. Right? And queen takes F4. So now this idea of E5 forking the queen and knight is not there because the knight is sitting on E5. So this is why Caruana felt it's safe to take that pawn. So Nakamura takes some more material, plays knight, E takes G4. Now the idea is to play this move. So bishop takes G4, and there's what you call a Zwischenjung, right? In between move. And he forks the queen and the knight. Okay, so now here Fabiano starts playing like Kasparov, like in his prime. Just I shouldn't even say that. Fabiano was playing like Fabiano. Like Fabiano's one of the strongest players of all time at this point. So I'm not even gonna do that to him and say he's playing like somebody else. No, he's playing like him. He's coming into his own prime in chess glory. So he plays a brilliant move here. And queen takes F6. He sacrifices the queen. Yes, you've seen it. You heard it. Right here. He sacrifices his queen against Hikaru Nakamura. And it's a brilliant move. If you look at the symptoms in the black position, we already talked about the king being in the middle. But notice the rooks aren't developed, and neither is this bishop. And this bishop is bad. So we can say that black has 4 pieces out of the game. And I think this justifies the sacrifice here. Meanwhile, white's pieces are swarming. right? White's pieces are all in the game. Only one that's not really in the game is this rook on h1. So he gets full compensation here for the material. So bishop takes f6. Now, again, we mentioned d5 earlier because he played e5. So now d5 is vulnerable. So knight d5, hitting the queen and the bishop. Queen d8. Knight f5. Now this move right here, it's an excellent spot for the knight. But it's if in other words, if material was even, it would be an excellent spot for the knight. But I'm not sure if that's the best move here. I'm thinking he has to at least play knight c6, hitting the queen one more time and trying to distract her from this bishop. So for instance, where's this queen? Where's the queen gonna go here? Right? If the queen goes here, right? So that's out of the question. Queen goes here, he's captured. The queen goes here, he's captured. The queen goes here, he's captured. If the queen goes there, he's captured. So where else is the queen gonna go? The answer is nowhere. So therefore, he has to play this move. Bishop takes g4. And then after knight takes g8, knight takes d8. There's a couple of moves here. That's probably the best because it doesn't allow the capture with check. So bishop takes d8. And here you have rook d2. And then just to finish off the variation, rook c8, and rook g1 attacking the bishop. And I think you have like a dynamically even game here. The material is equal. This knight's on a wonderful outpost. This is like a Nimzovich diagram showing the outpost, the support point, and the rook on the all on the open file. The idea being to pressure this pawn and into submission. But black has the two bishops, and he is somewhat behind in development. But the position is still partially closed, and the queens are off the board. So, in a perfect world, Caruana maybe should have just played knight c6. But in the game, knight c6 was played, and Caruana played rook b8 here. Now, what happens if Nakamura played rook b8. Now, what happens if Nakamura plays bishop takes f5? Right, bishop takes f5, bishop takes f5, and now rook to b8. c4, bishop e7, and we got a long game ahead of us, folks. Bishop king c2, and then maybe rook g8, and we can see black's pieces start to come alive here. And maybe instead of rook g8, maybe rook b7. The idea is to come here with the queen. Excuse me, come to b8 with the queen. So it's very interesting possibilities here. Because this knight is on a powerful square right here, and I would love to just get rid of it because this bishop isn't doing anything. Even though this outpost will be replaced by the bishop here, and then black would no longer have access to c8, it's probably better to try to uh, cut down some of the pieces. But it's hard to blame Naka for his decision. So rook b8, knight f6, queen takes f6, and now, and this is what I didn't like about it, is because with this knight here, now the d6 pawn falls, and Caruana plays rook takes d6, directly attacking the queen. Well, we have to consider this move also. Knight takes, because the queen is attacked with check. And after a move like king e7, you have the ready-made opposition move, which I love. I love these kind of moves, right? Piece of lower value with the bishop on c5, opposed to a piece of high value, which is the king, right? So queen f4 check, right? Even allowing them to win the piece and everything. Queen takes g4, but because you had this opposition, you get a discovered check. Nice c8. Got the king e8, knight d6 check. And where's the king gonna go? The rook is on this file. He can't go in these dark squares, so he has to go somewhere like that, which puts him again opposed to the rook. And I keep saying that in all the videos because this it's like people don't think about this tactic, but it's a very strong tactic and occurs a lot in chess games. It's just simply opposing a piece of high value with a piece of lower value, and it usually will gain you a tempo down the road because the person has to move that piece out the way, right? The king cannot stay in opposition to this rook because of discovery tactics, and this is what we see right here in this variation. See, because what happens is if you stay opposed to that piece long enough, it will come to bite you down the road. It might be 10 moves down the road, but that move is going to hurt. And they move that piece, and it's discovery time, and it's like, it's a check, or you losing a piece or a pawn or something. The opposition is an awesome tool. But anyway, I think knight takes. That's right, I said it. Caruana played rook takes. That's what was played in the game, but I think knight takes d6 was even stronger. Okay, so now bishop e6, right, just blocking. Rook hd1. Caruana just brings the last piece into development instead of being greedy and grabbing this a pawn. Notice again how all the pieces are in the mix, right? All of white's pieces are ready to go, and that's how you have to be when you sacrifice your queen, or it's you study end games like 3 minor pieces versus a queen, because this is really kind of the equivalent here. Is if you want to look at it, you got these 2 rooks up and leveled out, but these 2 rooks, and then you had really 3 minor pieces versus the queen, even though there's a bishop on the board. That's how I like to look at it. And but really what makes white better here is just simply his coordination of his pieces. Like you have the rook on h8, really still out of the game. Bishop on e6 is totally defensive, and the queen is not. Queen on f6 is really not doing anything of value or adding any value in the position. The queen is running for cover herself and not being strong and dominant in the position. So castles, connecting the rooks. So Nakamura is trying to squeeze out of the position here. H5 is played. The idea behind H5 is real primitive and real simple. That's just to put that bishop right there. Check. Nakamura says, nope, I'm going to check first. And Caruana says, I'm gonna attack your queen. So, and notice again, I'm gonna pick up a pawn because after the queen moves, you have the knight and bishop attacking on h6. That's why I was saying earlier. Just want to go back to the position real quick. I don't want to overdo it. That's why I was saying once when this knight jumped in on f5, Caruana should have snatched that knight off. Bishop takes f5 because that knights are the best pieces to have in outpost positions because of their ability to jump over other pieces and pawns. They just cover so much ground in the position. Like if you look right here, they're monsters in the they're monsters in the territory. Any other piece couldn't cover all of that territory. Like if the bishop was there, the bishop would just have that one or two diagonals and that'd be it. But the knight is just crazy. When you get the knight, that's why I'm drawing all these arrows, man. Look at this. You get the knight in those places like that, and you can tell this is fun for me. When you get the knight in these places like that, look at the power. Like you're gonna have dreams. Like meditate on this right now. Just count to 10 and look at this picture. Right, you gonna have dreams about these knights. That's what you want, and this is why Caruana had to play. Snatch that knight off on that 5 with the bishop. So now fast forward and back to where we're at, right after bishop e3. See, there's a knight brutalizing again. The first time the knight was able to help this rook come to d6 and win that pawn, attack the queen, and now the knight is brutalizing and marauding again. Knight takes h6, not giving him any rest. And now using the same square, using the outpost square. This is a principle of Nimzovich. I definitely suggest, if you haven't, read the book My System by Aaron Nimzovich. It's an old book, but there are new versions where the annotation is updated, and it's not like the old style annotation where it's hard to follow. For instance, instead of saying e4, it'd be like pawn king 4 and all that stuff like that. King bishop 3 and stuff. And you'd be like, oh man, it's gonna take me 8 days to go through this one game. But they have updated versions, with the modern notation. And this is all like principles that Nimzovich talked about using the outposts, and oftentimes an outpost square will be used by different pieces, which is awesome. It's like like a subway station, like different trains will stop there. And in this case f5, different pieces stop on f5. First you had the knight there, and now now the bishop is there. E5 is another. I'm sorry. D5 is the other outpost. Queen E7, and B5 is played. Interesting move here. And the reason why I said it's interesting move is because this move right here is very strong. Knight takes F7. Right, there's a mating net here. Let's look at what's going on. So first, let's look at just rook takes F7. Yeah, rook takes E6, and then where's the queen? Where's the queen going? Let's say the queen goes to F8. You got rook H6, and the queen has to give itself up for that rook. Because if you try to say king H8 or something like that, then just simply rook G1 and queen G1 happens. then you just get fancy and play a move like that. That's just an example. Knight takes F7 again, and if bishop takes again, the rook comes over and starts marauding and pillaging. You see, all the material just starts getting lost because black has to interpose. Play bishop e6, then that's taken, etc., etc. Again, I think I showed you with the rook. I showed you the bishop and the queen, and then you just take rook on e6. Again, the rook is coming here. Next move. So let's say he gets greedy. You know, you see. So it's all kind of pain and agony after the move knight takes f7. So that was basically the knockout blow right there. Caruana played b5. I mean, he's still winning. And now after queen e8, Caruana could still play the same thing there. On rook takes b5. Again, the same move is available. Knight takes f7 is the winning move. Any move, knight takes f7 is the winning move here. So queen e8, and then he played it. So for some reason he might have felt he had to play that first, but he might have overlooked it also, and then saw it on the next move. So knight takes f7. I have to see the interview and see what he had to say about it. Rook takes f7, and just like I just showed you, but basically with the extra move in hand, basically. So queen takes b5, rook h6, and Nakamura resigned because he saw the pain and agony that was awaiting. There's no mate. There'll be no glorious escape for him here. After king g8, just rook g1. And these bishops combined with these rooks are just too powerful. King f8. And what happens is the rook starts marauding on the back rank. And at the king e7, rook takes b8. Gets rid of the, any kind of mating attempts. And then the bishop gets to work. Bishop c5. And notice these squares being covered. So, for instance, there's a couple of places he could try to go. If he goes here, for instance, he just gets mated with rook g6. Okay, so that's out of the question. Notice these bishops cross here like the sword of Damocles, right? If he goes to king e8, then we see the queen being lost. But who cares about the queen? Well, you could get checkmate. Right? And what else? After bishop c5, he could come here, and it's basically the same thing. Rook g8, but instead he has this little escape square here, and he can only escape to a loss because after rook takes, king takes, and guess what? There's our next queen right there. That this rook would not be able to stop this pawn in conjunction with these two bishops. So Nakamura resigned after rook takes h6. So that was just a exciting game, and thank you to Hikaru Nakamura for playing the Najdorf, because without black's cooperation, then you wouldn't be able to see the creativity of Fabiano Caruana in that variation of the Sicilian. So again, props to Nakamura for playing a sharp variation. I mean, he could have just played Berlin defense and or something real dry or whatever, and we still been sitting around looking at 4-3 king side pawns versus each other in the rook ending. But instead, he tried to go for a win with the black pieces. It didn't work out. But, the fans were treated to an exciting game today. So I hope you like this video. As I always say, please subscribe, comment, ask questions, and, tell your friends, about the channel. So I will see you guys soon on the next video. There were a lot of decisive games today, so I probably have to analyze another one. So I'll see you guys later.